What is trolling? By definition, it's someone who makes a deliberately provocative post on the internet. But I think there's more. You see, I believe trolling represents more than just a dumb post or a funny quote to say to annoy people. No, I think there's a lot more. Feelings, ideas, communities, all of these make trolling as we know it today, an art form that no one can comprehend. And with every art form comes history, rich lore that explains everything we need to know, from its memorable moments to people who broke boundaries and reimagined the art form as we know it. So please join me as we take a look at the history of trolling. Many people have their theories about the world's first troll. Some say trolling started with teabagging your friends in Halo. Some say it started with the rise of the internet. But where trolling truly started was centuries before Halo or the internet, in 12th century BC with the Trojan War, specifically the Trojan horse. You see, in Greek mythology, the Trojan horse was a gift from the Achaeans to the Trojans as a peace offering to end a 10-year war. But in reality, it was a trap, with Achaean soldiers hidden inside the horse to execute a sneak attack. And this moment was huge for a number of reasons. Not only did it allow the Achaeans to win the war against the Trojans, but it was also the first instance of trolling. You see, when an instance of trolling happens, there are two parties involved, the troller and the trolled. The troller is the person who is committing the action of trolling, while the trolled is the person who is receiving the troll. And the Trojan horse is the perfect example of this. The Achaeans are the trollers, while the Trojans are the trolled. And with this marked the first instance of trolling. And as time moved on, the art of trolling only grew more and more, and this was accompanied with the rise of the internet. The internet allowed people to do things that were never thought to be possible. Information at your fingertips, interacting with people from across the entire world, the possibilities seemed endless. And with this new technology came a lot more opportunities for trolling and its potential. You see, slightly before the internet, the art of trolling was becoming lost. Pranks and practical jokes were still a thing, but that was basically it until the 1990s when online forum rooms and discussion boards became a thing, allowing people to discuss certain interests and hobbies. Forums were a nice, safe place for people to talk to others, and this was also the perfect place to troll, with many people saying rude comments to others who partake in these forums, often making fun of their hobbies and interests. And this type of trolling would be prevalent throughout the internet, with many becoming infuriated with the way these particular people would act. With one of the biggest factors being anonymity, a troll's greatest weapon. Since no one actually knew who these people were, there was no actual way to punish them. And with this power, trolls could get away with interrupting the peace on the internet, with some of the first people to do this called net.weenies, and were influential into making the modern troll. Using many new tactics like warlording, which used large annoying text to fill up large portions of online forums, they also started flame wars with other users just to mess with them. It's no surprise that trolls weren't the kindest of people, constantly messing with people who don't really deserve it. But at the same time, it didn't matter. To them, it was fun seeing other people get irrationally furious because of someone they never truly met. This was the point of trolling, and soon we'll get our first true contributor, Bryce Wellington. Bryce was unique to most forums. Described as a born-again Catholic, Bryce was known for his unique way of trolling, going on insane ramblings about a multitude of topics and saying particularly controversial takes that typically wouldn't be heard in a normal conversation. And even though this is normal for trolling today, back in the 1990s, conversation like this was particularly unheard of. People took his supposedly satirical comments more seriously, becoming more and more annoyed as time went on. But trolls never really hit the mainstream public eye for a while. Unless you were active on the internet during this time, people never really interacted or even heard of a troll. But yet again, the internet was new. People didn't really understand how it worked or what it could do. So it was only a matter of time before trolling had a wider reach. But that wouldn't happen until 4chan.
Who is this 4chan person or website?
4chan started in 2003 and was made by Christopher Poole as a way for Westerners to talk about anime, but it quickly grew as a discussion board for various topics. But 4chan had a huge problem when it came to trolls, specifically with hackers. These hackers were notorious for taking trolling to the next level, with more serious actions like death threats and even in some cases, doxing. But what's interesting about these hackers was their ability to band together for a certain cause, and the sheer amount of trolls was kind of impressive, from getting into beef with certain celebrities, hacking billboards to display unwanted messages, to even getting political at some points. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with some of the stuff they did, but the point I'm trying to get across is that 4chan was the main haven for online trolls, and with so many trolls in one place, many groups were formed. Some of these groups you may have heard of, like Anonymous, known for their various cyber attacks across the internet, but there is one incident that I feel needs to be addressed, an incident that put 4chan and Anonymous in the spotlight, and that is Project Chronology, which was a huge protest against the Church of Scientology. You see, the Church of Scientology is well known for doing shady business behind the scenes. In this case, it was trying to remove footage of an interview with Tom Cruise, believing the church was hiding something or spreading misinformation. The protests gained media traction and the group were deemed cyber terrorists, with some of the actions of Anonymous being online, making websites connected to the church inaccessible for days at a time while also leaking internal documents onto the internet. And these repeated attacks started a war with the Church of Scientology, with members of the church prompting the FBI to get involved. With huge gatherings across the United States, from Boston all the way to Los Angeles, it's no surprise that the group was taunting and purposely annoying the church, bringing their online interactions into real life. And with all of the chaos going on, it's important to note the media's role in all of this. Many news outlets were discussing the events happening, making certain groups and websites more well known and talked about. CNN even invited members of the church to talk about the situation. Project Chronology broke the threshold for trolling. Now, instead of some niche internet thing, trolling blew up around this time, and Project Chronology pushed those boundaries, allowing for more people to get involved more than ever. But it wasn't long before the community struck gold. You see, in late 2008, an image would appear on the internet that would change trolling forever. I'm of course talking about Trollface. The image everyone associates with the word troll was created by Carlos Ramirez, who at the time was a college student in Oakland. The image was posted to his DeviantArt page in 4chan, in which the image immediately blew up and people started making memes about it instantly. The thing about Trollface is that at first look, it seems like an ordinary image, but what elevates it into meme status is not only its absurdity, but also its crude nature, being drawn in a somewhat unpleasant art style that isn't really that appealing to the eye. Mix this with a big grin that looks sarcastic and an absence of color, and all of a sudden you have one of the internet's most famous images, portraying everything you need to know about trolling without saying a single word. And this wasn't Carlos's only success either. He is also well known for creating rage comics, which were comic strips drawn in a similar style to Trollface with a somewhat crude design and an absence of color. But these comics were different than typical comics, often showing characters being made fun of, typically mocking internet culture in ways previous comics haven't done before, making them feel more fresh and original. These comics would go on to become popular meme formats and stay relevant for years to come, holding their significance in internet culture. The history of trolling is just one big iceberg when you think about it. The deeper you go, the more obscure you get, but also the more unsettling. You see, up to this point, I've been giving you a description of trolling and everything that has happened, but from this point onwards, I'll be diving deeper into trolling and its history, and talk about some of the darker stories and events that aren't really talked about. These stories will discuss dark topics like suicide, murder, certain crimes, and harassment. So if you feel uncomfortable about these topics, then click off the video. With that out of the way, let's begin the journey into the dark history of trolling. Spring 2006. That was when Mitchell Henderson, who was a 7th grade student at the time, took his own life. The news was heartbreaking, and many of Mitchell's friends decided to make a memorial for him on MySpace, honoring his death. But what happened next was interesting. A group on the internet called B, which at the time was a 4chan discussion board that mainly contained trolls, found Mitchell's MySpace page, and then chaos ensued. Many people noticed a spelling error while reading the page. Instead of saying A hero, the page instead said N hero. People also noticed the fact that the page mentioned that Mitchell lost an iPod. B used this information to mock Mitchell, saying that he killed himself because he couldn't find his lost iPod. Now, instead of a tragedy, Mitchell's death became a well-known meme, with many images and comments joking about his death. And with all this mockery happening, it's easy to see how trolling can be taken too far. Instead of protests or being annoying on discussion boards, it was now making fun of a MySpace page over a spelling error. It's easy to see how trolling can be dangerous. When you give people no consequences for their actions, the results are troubling. As of today, N Hero remains a piece of obscure internet history, a piece that reveals what people are really like when faced with no consequences. It's sad to see a tragedy that affected multiple people turn into a joke to make fun of. But when it comes to the internet, nothing is sacred. And this isn't the only case of 4chan mocking people who took their own lives or were murdered. The deeper you go, the more outlandish and absurd it gets. And in the case of Bianca Devins, things couldn't have gotten worse. On July 24th, 2019, Bianca Devins and Brandon Clark went to a concert together. Later that night, Bianca was murdered and her remains were posted on social media platforms like Discord and Instagram and were later shared on 4chan. And people on 4chan saw her death as a joke, saying that the killer was justified in their actions and that she deserved what happened to her. If you've been around the internet, this isn't surprising. Toxicity runs in the deepest part of the internet, with trolls spouting racist, sexist, and misogynistic comments just because they can. Story after story of trolls being a nuisance on the internet keep popping up, and it makes you wonder what was so funny about Bianca's murder. Was it because the killer thought it was a good idea to post the images online, or did it come from a place of misogyny and a dislike towards women? Either way, the history of trolling doesn't stop with rude comments or mocking dead people. Illegal activities like CP, leaking personal information, death threats, and a lot of cyberbullying run rampant in this community. But there's one individual that takes online trolling to the extreme, harassing multiple people online with a toxic fanbase, and his name is Maximilian Muss. A Fortnite YouTuber who would go on to become one of the most infamous trolls on YouTube, Maximilian Muss was notorious for his actions. You might recognize him from a year ago when YouTubers like Moist Critical and Some Ordinary Gamers talked about Max's constant harassing on the internet. Targeting streamers and YouTubers by doxing, swatting, and spamming racist or homophobic comments in their chat with the intention of getting them banned. And it didn't help that Max had a huge following. At the height of his internet fame, he had well over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and it wasn't hard for Max to control his audience either, even telling his fans to stream on YouTube just so then he can make fun of them. And with all these variables adding up, it gave Max and his audience a negative reputation. In the case of Weast, he has been personally attacked by Max and his posse, with people finding personal information and using it against him, affecting his life on YouTube and seeing that seep into his real life. Max has also made his chat impersonate Weast's fanbase in order to get him banned. And I can't talk about Maximilian Muss without talking about the large amount of CP that is supposedly a joke. When it comes to Max and the fanbase, it's almost like they're detached from reality, becoming so submerged in their own subculture to the point where they can't even be described as human. Maximilian Muss is the prime example of trolling taken too far. Max has done so much where you wonder if what he's doing is even considered trolling, where the line between trolling and pure degeneracy is blurred. Is posting CP on your Discord server as a joke really considered trolling? Where's the line set? Or does the line even exist? And that's the thing about trolling, it isn't pretty. A history filled with vile actors that never seem to learn, but that just comes with the dark history of trolling.